Okay, in this video I'm going to show you just some tips for remembering the special angles. These angles that come up all the time in a pre-calculus course, trig course, calculus course. You should memorize them, right? But if you can't memorize everything, say you forget, I'm going to show you how to get to them. Or it's better really to understand than memorize anyway. Okay, so let's just go through a few of them. Starting with the sine of pi over 6. So let's say I can't remember what that is. I'm just going to draw a quick triangle. Okay, and if you do this enough, you could draw this picture in your head maybe. Okay, so say that's a right triangle, and what I'm going to do is just label the angles, right? This is going to be a 30, 60, 90. That is, this is pi over, this is pi over 6 right here, or 30 degrees. Right, that angle's 30 degrees, and this angle, of course, would be 60 if it's a right triangle. Okay, so at some point you got to remember something. So if I can remember the ratio from geometry of this right triangle, that the smallest side, if I start with the smallest side being 1, then the hypotenuse is double that, and the other leg opposite the 60 degree is root 3 over 2. Okay, if I can just come up with that picture, if I can remember that picture, then I can really get the sine, cosine, tangent, cosecant, secant, cotangent of any of the 30 or 60 degree angles, right? So for this example, sine of pi over 6, 30 degrees, if I remember the sine's opposite over hypotenuse, right? So sine of pi over 6 has to be 1 over 2. That's the opposite from 30 degrees over the hypotenuse. Okay, and then anything else that I'm asked for, let's say I'm asked for the tangent, 60 degrees, and I remember that the tangent definition, of course, is opposite over adjacent. I go to 60 degrees, opposite over adjacent, root 3 over 1, and I have my answer right there, right? So this isn't really a special trick or anything. It's just drawing the 30, 60, 90 triangle, and once I have that, then I can really get to all my answers for 30 or 60 degrees. Okay, so the same thing is true with 45. Let's say we were asked to find the secant 45 degrees, or pi over 4. Okay, and maybe I can't remember. Okay, you should know the cosine or sine. Those ones are fairly easy to remember. But let's just say we want to make sure that we got the right answer. So again, I'm going to draw a triangle. This one should be, of course, 45, 45, 90. That's close enough. And so I'll go ahead and label real quick. Right angle, 45 degrees, pi over 4, 45 degrees, pi over 4. Okay? So if we can remember the ratio of the sides, this is, of course, these two angles are congruent, so these two legs are congruent. And if you start with the small side being 1, then that's 1, and this ratio is root 2. Okay? So what I do for secant, cosecant, cotangent, I basically just remember what the for the secant, for example, I just remember the cosine. Right? Most of you might remember that it's root 2 over 2. Oops, cosine of pi over 4. Fix that. So I want the secant of pi over 4. What I'm going to do is find the cosine of pi over 4 and just flip it around, right? Because I know that reciprocal property. Again, there's a bunch of ways to get to these results, but I like to, if I'm asked to find the secant, I like to find the cosine. Okay, once I have the cosine, then I just flip it around. Okay, so hopefully you remember the cosine of pi over 4 is root 2 over 2. Okay, but if I don't remember that, I can go to this triangle. Right, the cosine of pi over 4, 45 degrees, adjacent over hypotenuse, right? The cosine of 45 degrees adjacent over hypotenuse. That's 1 over root 2, which, if I rationalize it, of course, would be root 2 over 2. Okay, so that's the cosine. So the secant is what I was asked for originally, is the reciprocal of that, the reciprocal of root 2 over 2. Or if you start with our first answer for cosine, the reciprocal of 1 over root 2 would be root 2 over 1, right, which is root 2. Okay, so basically the point of this is, if you forget these angles, then what you do is you just go to your triangle, right? Draw your triangle and you get your solution. And what I'm going to do next is extend this to angles that are greater than 90 degrees. So let's take a look at an angle greater than 90, for example. Say I want to find the cosine of, let's say, 11 pi over 6. Okay. Okay, so now we're getting into angles that we might not remember as well, right? It's not quite as familiar as, say, pi over 6 or pi over 3. So I got to think about this a little bit more. Really what we want is the reference angle here. Once we have the reference angle, then we can get the angle. Okay, so what I like to do is just real quick draw a quick sketch, right? Where's 11 pi over 6? And even if you can't, if you do enough of these, you can draw this picture in your head, right? 11 pi over 6 is almost 2 pi. That is, it's pi over 6 short of 2 pi. Okay, so this angle right here is pi over 6. Okay, so right away I know that if I use my triangle theory, right? If I draw a triangle here, right triangle, and this is pi over 6, then that means this side is 1, opposite the 30-degree angle. This side is root 3. And this is 2. Okay, so if I can come up with that picture, then I got it, right? Because the cosine is defined then as x over r, and in my picture, x is root 3, and r is 2, right? So that's one way to get that. Just draw a quick picture, and even eventually you do enough that you can draw that in your head, right? And you know that if it's a 30-degree angle, then the side opposite that's got to be the smaller side, right? The 1, and the side adjacent's got to be the bigger side, the root 3. So you get the cosine being root 3 over 2. Okay, so this is, again, one way to do this. There's a couple ways to remember these. I like to draw pictures, all right? How about the tangent? 5 pi over 4. Okay, why don't you hit pause and try and figure that out real quick and then see how I do it. Okay, what I'm going to do again, draw a picture. We got to be familiar with these angles now. 5 pi over 4 is 4 pi over 4 is pi, right? Half a turn would be pi, and it's pi over 4 more. So real quick, I got that angle. A little sloppy. 5 pi over 4. Okay, so hopefully we know the tangent, this reference angle is going to be pi over 4 right here. So we should be thinking 1. It's 1 or negative 1. But again, you could just draw a quick picture, quick triangle. You know that there's 45, 45, 90, so I got 1. I got 1 tangent being y divided by x, which is, that should be negative 1, I'm sorry, right? That's in the third quadrant, so y is negative there. The tangent is y over x, which of course is negative 1. Okay, these angles are all on your unit circle, right? So you could just memorize them all. And for the tangent, divide always sine by cosine, you get the tangent, or draw pictures. Okay, so I hope that helps. Look for more videos about this and other trig topics as well. Keep working.